Well, guys, welcome everyone. I hope everyone's been doing well. I'm super pumped that we are back on these calls. I know it's been a few weeks, but on the team, we kind of took like a meeting internally, and we were like, "Hey, we need to bring this back." And there's a bit of pushback, to be honest, but we're like, "No, let's get this going." And we do feel like it's blessed a lot of people. We've gotten a lot of DMs. If you guys are not in Telegram chat, Blake will drop the link. There's about 115 of us there, and we're constantly just sharing like creative ideas, creative thoughts. On our drive to camping, actually, Blake and I were like sending feedback to people on their personal projects, on their website projects, and it's really fun. And I don't know if Johan is on this call, but Johan from England, which I don't know if shout out because England's playing Mexico, so I don't know how much of a shout out I can give him. But I'm excited, dude. I'm actually really excited to bring this call. I'm also really happy that the World Cup is happening as we're doing this. It's like there's like a sense of unity there. And in that note, I do want to present everybody Andrew Lennon. If you guys don't follow him on Instagram, his tag is saint.lennon. We jumped on a call a few days ago, Blake, Andrew, and I told him like I had been following him. I've been seeing his work for a few years now, and I will say Saint Lennon is how I only knew of him. Obviously, now that we meet, it's like Andrew. His work has definitely, there's something really distinct about it that I really appreciate and I really respect, and it's why I was like, I think a call with Andrew would be really good, because I think obviously we've talked about design, and we're always talking about creative. One of the things, and Andrew will talk about it, is there's something really specific about Andrew that Blake and I, as we were searching to do more calls with more creatives and more artists and more people, Andrew was the first one on the list for a specific reason. I'm not saying it because I want him to talk about it, but what we're talking about today is nurturing the creative soul. We're constantly pushing, we're constantly talking about output. We're constantly talking about what are we doing? What are we making? We need to be making every day. We need to be making every hour. I'm a huge believer in that. I've seen growth in that. I've done what I could to always like share that advice with creatives, is more than like living in your head, is making those ideas in your head come to life. And obviously there's like a lot of beauty in that. But after having a conversation with Andrew for about 45 to an hour, the importance of this topic of nurturing the creative soul is actually pretty vital, dude. Especially now with social media. I know there's moments where it's like it's really easy to. I mean, there's 100 clothing brands, right? There's millions of Instagram channels that are similar. There's millions of churches looking the same. And again, circling full circle here, is the goal with Symphony is to remind everybody that though all of that is happening, one, we're all unique and we can make the things that we see in our head, and that can make an impact. And two, as we're doing that, our soul is very, very important. And I want everybody here to always feel like, hey, I'm making the best thing that I can. I'm working constantly, but my soul is taken care of. And that's where I really want Andrew. I welcome Andrew to our video stage, or however you want to call it. But Andrew, I'll go here next. I like this slide because it just says pastor. But Andrew, if you could just share a quick overview of your background and a bit about yourself, dude.
Yeah, well, honored to be here. Love your team, all the things that you guys are doing and that you guys have done in the past. So super honored to be a part. So for those that don't know me, my journey, I was bivocational artist, designer, and then also was in the process of planting our church called Breakthrough. We're out here in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I was kind of building my design career. For those of you that followed me way back in the day, I essentially built a design brand called Saint Lennon. So that's where the name came from. And the Lord blessed it. I, had the honor of working for tons of different artists and clients and brands. And honestly, it blew up for a bit. And near the end of my freelance career, our church was growing at the same time. And it was like this interesting pace of like ministry is starting to pick up, our church is growing, and then my design career is growing at the same time, and balancing both was really interesting. And essentially led me to a point where I left freelance and actually got a job at Bethel as one of their lead designers. So I worked for Bethel for almost 2 years as one of their designers. It was an amazing job, amazing environment, grew a lot while I was there. But when I was there, our church like was fully planted. We're in that in between awkward stage as a church where like your church is growing, but financially it's like not fully there yet. So I was literally working at Bethel, was getting paid some by our church, but it wasn't full time. And to be honest with you guys, I hit a point where I was literally working 60 hours a week. I mean, working full time at Bethel, planning a church. If you can imagine the responsibility of being a lead pastor, it was a lot. And I hit a point working 60 hours a week, pretty much working 6 days a week, where I legit started to burn out. And I think in our day and culture, we kind of throw that word burnout kind of just like out of nowhere. Like, yeah, I'm burnt out. Like I'm tired. I burnt out. And for me, burnout is like a very intense like reaction. And when I was experiencing this burnout, it was because my output was so intense that literally I was getting sick. And I remember one day I was like designing stuff for a church, designing something for Bethel, finishing my sermon. I was like doing all this stuff at once, like Saturday night. And I remember I just got sick, and I literally had like food poisoning symptoms because of the overwhelm and stress my body was carrying from that season. And I literally started throwing up. Like it was such an intense reaction. And I was like, I'm not gonna be at church tomorrow. I don't know what's going on. So I was like, I just went to sleep and told my team, hey guys, I'm not gonna go to church. Like I'm sick. And I woke up and everything was completely fine. And it was literally because of how intense I was producing and working. And for me, that was a moment where I was like, hey, I need to reassess my life. And I essentially quit Bethel in faith because I was like, God, I can't, this is not sustainable. For context, I have 3 kids. It's not sustainable for my family, not sustainable for my life. So I quit Bethel in faith. In a few months, our church just started growing, and I went full time. So I was able to do ministry full time. But kind of where the story kind of has led to where I am today is after I quit Bethel, I was still super exhausted and burnt out from just design work and creating. And I essentially stopped making art for an entire year. And so you can imagine, like, if you followed me in the past, like I was making stuff constantly, there's a lot of amazing opportunities working from Bethel to then for an entire year, not even designing, making anything. And I hit a point where I was like, I think that season's done. Like, I think that was a stepping stone. I'm just going to be a full-time pastor, being an artist, being a creative. That was just like a part of the storyline, and that season's done. And a year later of no creating or anything, I still like was not recovered. And I remember going on a sabbatical, and I was like, why do I still feel disconnected from myself? And long story short, had this realization that by cutting off my creativity, it actually kept me in a burnt out state. And the point wasn't I needed to quit. The point was I needed to rest, and led me into a really beautiful season of resting. And in that season, the Lord kind of revitalized even my life, my calling. Started getting vision about, if you follow me now, about creativity and beauty, and seeing the church step into that. Our church went through a massive vision rehaul. We started adding creativity as a core value. And like, I'm probably in the most creative season I've ever been in my entire life after that season of rest. And so for me, this topic is not just like, hey, this is a really cool thing to talk about. It's like, I live this. I lived both ends of it. And I think for every single creative, especially if you're in a high output environment, being able to nurture your soul is so essential for the long haul.
I was trying to remember myself. That's so good, dude. That I'm sure everyone on this call, or most of us, have felt that and been there. I had one quick question. Maybe I save it for the Q&A.
No, I think.
Because I guess, like, is there a moment you said I was like, you were like graphic designing, you're doing your sermon, you're doing your dad thing. Was there a part of you that you were like hyped about that? Like, was there a part of you that's like, I'm doing this thing? Because there's a part of things where it's like, the more you do, you're kind of like, you're like, yeah, I can do all of that. And there's like a pride thing, but there's also like this, like, it's sort of fun. Did you ever have any feeling of that? Like, oh, because sometimes I've fallen into like, oh, that means I'm doing the right thing. But I've also then seen the other side of it where it's like, actually, no, I actually have gotten sick as well. Right? Like, did you have that as well?
I think for a window. Like there was a window, like when I was working for Bethel, and for me, like that was a huge moment. Bethel was really big, a couple of years, still are really big, but it was like a really hype moment where I was like, man, I've arrived. And there was that piece of like, oh, I'm doing the thing, like I'm crushing it, I'm working a really amazing job, our church is growing, I'm doing a lot of things, like even my Instagram, like there's influence, all this stuff. And I think there's a window where like there's a grace for that. And I was operating way out of that window. And I think that's the thing that, it's like there is a place for like, hey, let's grind, like let's hustle, let's get work done, like let's see the God dream happen. But then there's also, we need to understand rhythm. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about, is like rhythm is so important so that thing can be sustained and actually be fruitful. Because I know a lot of people, they do that, and then for what could have happened for me, which I was really close to, is you just quit. And like you're done, and like I'm just gonna get a normal easy job and settle for really easy life and just work a 9 to 5, because I tried that and it didn't work. When in reality, it's not that it didn't work, it's that you didn't have the right rhythms.
Super good. I mean, I know this is one thing, right? Creativity is the expression of the soul.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah. Go ahead, dude. That was I thought you started. I was
that was my intro.
No, go for it, dude. You have to understand, Andrew is a pastor. He's preaching every week, so he's dialed in when it comes to these things. Go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
So I want to talk about nurturing the creative soul. I feel like that was a good setup. Why this is important is that creativity is an expression of your soul. So when we think about creativity, it feels kind of like this abstract thing where you're like, what actually is creativity? What is it about? And I want us to understand, when we create, it is actually an expression of who we are. So where we get this is when we look in Genesis and we see the creation account. When God starts looking at the things that he makes and he starts declaring it as good, right? He looks at the trees, says it's good. He looks at the sun, he says it is good. He looks at the animals, he says it is good. He looks at his human beings, he says it's very good. The reason that what he made is good is because he is good. And the fact that it carries the attribute of goodness is because it's a reflection of who he is, which is that he's the source of all goodness. So when we understand that, even in our own lives, the things that we create are an expression of who we are. It's an expression of what is in us. It's an expression of our soul. So if our soul is disconnected, if we're disconnected from our own soul, and just to define our soul for us, your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. So your mind, your thoughts, your will, your desires, your emotions, your feelings. That's what makes up your soul. And so if we're disconnected from our inner being, like if we are emotionally disconnected, if we're mentally overwhelmed, if we're indecisive, like if all of that is happening, it is going to be really difficult for us to actually create authentically and create in a genuine place. Because then what happens is we're kind of creating from this place of striving, if you've ever done that, and you're like trying to force a design, force a project. There is a reality, right? We see in Proverbs 4 where it says, guard your heart above all else, because everything you do flows from it. And so realizing that everything you do flows from your heart, your creativity flows from your heart, your imagination, your ideas, your problem solving, the ideas, it's flowing from your inner being. And so that's why it's so important for us to guard it, to protect it, to tend to it, to nurture it. Because if everything you do flows from that place, like you want that place to be guarded and cared for and nurtured, as we're kind of using that language. And so there really are 3 points I kind of want to give us this afternoon about how we actually do this. How do we nurture our creative soul? Because like I mentioned, like for those of you who feel called to this and you feel called to pioneer in the creative space, or you're already doing it, is, man, we want to do this for the long haul, but also like we want to keep evolving. Like we don't want to just like, oh, we hit this really cool peak and then now we're 40 and we're like old news. You know what I mean? It's like, cool, I had my 20s and I was making cool stuff, and then now like everything I make sucks. It's like we don't want that. Like we want to keep evolving and growing and maturing and making, like I want to be in my like 70s and like still making insane stuff. Like I want it to just keep evolving. And I think if our soul is the place that comes from, then that place needs to be guarded and nurtured. So the first thing I want to point out is that rest is a part of creation. And I think it's really interesting, going back to Genesis, when you look at the creation account, rest is a part of it. And I think we kind of skip over that because we're like, he creates on the 6th day, on the 7th day, he rests. And it's like, he very easily could have ignored that and just be like, and he created in 6 days, boom, it's done. And then we move on. It's like, no, on the 6th day, he finished, and on the 7th day he rested. And we actually see that rest is actually a part of creation. Like, it's a part of the whole aspect of creating. And so for our souls to be healthy, guys, we have to have rhythms of rest. And even go back for me, why I hit that point of burnout was because I didn't have those rhythms. Like, I was just producing. I was, a dad, a husband, a pastor, and being a pastor has like 20 other hats. I was a designer for Bethel, was doing all these stuff. And I didn't have the right rhythms to actually sustain that kind of lifestyle. And so if we want to nurture our soul, we have to prioritize rest. And one of the things I said here is that you're not a machine that is meant to endlessly produce. And I think that is so crucial for us to understand it. And I know it's hard for a lot of us when we're in environments where like we kind of have to produce. And I think that's the part. And I saw that because I was in that of like, okay, if you can't change that, then how much more do you need to see rest prioritize? And I think when we understand that rest isn't like a break, rest is part of creation. Like, it's part of your creative act. Like, that needs to be interwoven within your process. And so like, hey, if you're going to like, hey, you're given a project, let's say hypothetically, hey, you're going to brand this conference. Okay, rest is a part of creation. And so put that in there, pencil that in, fit that in. Okay, I'm going to have an hour a day where I sit and I rest and I brainstorm and I sit in God's presence and I pray, because that place is just as important as the producing and the making and the strategizing. And so rest is a part of creation. And why rest is so important as creatives is it's in the place of rest that we actually give ourselves space to get the God ideas. And if we want the God ideas, not just like the social media strategy ideas, but if we want like the divine, like Holy Spirit inspired ideas, it comes when you're resting. Because when you're resting, you're actually postured to receive, and you're actually slow enough to be able to hear from the Lord. One of my mentors, he said this thing to me years ago that always stuck with me. He said, revelation comes to the rested. Revelation comes to the rested. And it's like, man, if we want revelation, like, one of the things that I said is like, creativity is more than decoration. It's a revelation. It's like, we want to create things that aren't just like, hey, this is just like pretty decorations that just like make things look good. But we actually want what we make to carry like a revelation of God. Like, it carries substance. It carries something powerful and meaningful. Like, revelation doesn't come when we're in the hustle. It comes when we're on the 7th day and we cease from our work and we rest. And part of that too, going back to like the machine imagery of like endlessly producing, we don't put rest as a part of creation. We actually don't allow ourselves to enjoy what we made. And I think when we look at even God resting on the 7th day, he rested because the work was done. He didn't rest because he was tired. He rested because the work was done. But on the 7th day, what was he doing? He was enjoying what he made. Like, he was delighting in his creation. He was hanging out with Adam, walking in the cool of the day. He was looking at what he made and said, this is good. This is good. And if you even break down the word good, in Hebrew, it's tov, which means beautiful. So he's looking at his creation. He's saying, it's beautiful, it's beautiful, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. And I think for a lot of us is we have to actually rest to enjoy what we made. And we need to rest and delight in our creation, because that actually fills us and empowers us to want to keep going and to keep evolving and to keep making new things and keep, it's like, if we're just making things and we're like not enjoying what we made, we're missing a huge proponent of creativity. Like, and creativity isn't just for efficiency, it's for delight. And so when we rest, we're saying, hey, let's delight in what we made, and we delight in the projects that we're producing. And so rest is a part of creation.
you said something right now. I mean, you said really good things. I love the revelation comes to the rested. Super good. And then the lighting in your work. We do live like in a culture of sort of like nonchalant, like, yeah, I did that. And you kind of don't want to like talk about it, you know? So to hear that, it is refreshing for everybody here, right? Like I've had so many conversations with so many people and artists and projects where they're like, I just don't want to, like, should I post that? Should I share that? And it's like this constant tug of war. Just to hear that is super like refreshing. One of the questions JP is on here. Are you on here, JP?
Yeah.
You had a quick question. I know we're like kind of short on time, but go. I know you said you wanted to ask something.
What you're saying is like super helpful and like articulated really well. The one thing that like I think for me I would love to know is like how do you rest like practically? Like what is like the practical, like maybe like one or two things that you would say like within like maybe as a designer and then within just like
life,
a man that's a dad, a pastor, a son, like all of those things, like where do you find rest? Obviously in the Lord is what you're saying, but like what practically, like where do you escape or that kind of stuff?
That's good. So one thing I'll say is your level of input has to match your level of output. And so if you're having high output, you have to be stewarding your input. And so like, you know, my whole motto, it's like, I think, what was it people say, like work hard, play hard. For me, it's like work hard, rest hard. And practically, I think there's micro and macro. Macro ways for me is we actually have a weekly Sabbath where every Monday we actually turn our phone off and like no one from our church can reach us unless like it's like code red. So Mondays it's like we don't do any work, I don't do any ministry, I just rest, and do things that are filling for me. I time with my family, I pray. So it's like a macro way. A micro way in a smaller magnitude, even just make it more practically when you design, is there's moments where this actually happened yesterday. I was trying to design something and I wanted to post something because I was like, I have like these creative ideas and I was making things, but nothing was like really good. Like nothing was like, I want to post this or this is worth posting, but also making things. And I've learned to become really in tune of like, is what I'm making, does it feel forceful or does it feel like it's overflow? Like, does it feel like, oh, this feels very genuine to who I am? Or is it like, am I forcing something to make it, to make happen? And I understand there's some contexts where you kind of just have to do that. But I've realized for me, when I hit that wall of like, oh, I feel like I'm forcing something, I just stop. And I literally just cease. And I'm like, all right, I don't need to force something right now. And then I'll pick it up the next day. And then like, there's a grace. And so being able to be in tune, because the more that you force things to happen, you're actually draining yourself from actually doing the thing that's going to be graced.
That's so beautiful. I mean, that I feel like leads to your second point, right?
Yep.
It's so good. That was such a good answer.
Yeah, dude, I think that's so, like, especially for those of us who like kind of what that last point. Sorry, really quick, Joe.
Yeah,
like,
go for it.
Just like I think for, you know, I think a lot of when you're like a capable person, when you're somebody who's really good at what you do, it's so frustrating because to get to that point where like
you're hitting that wall.
You hit that wall and you're like, wait, no, I'm good. Like I know I'm good, but it's just not connecting right now.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. And for me, sometimes like my response to that is usually like, I just need to try harder. And like, I'm not doing enough. And so like to combat that with what you're saying of like, oh, actually drop it and rest.
Yeah.
And come back to it later. Like that is just gold, I think.
That's good, bro. Yeah. So the second thing I'll say is that to nurture a healthy creative soul is that a healthy soul has to flow from authenticity. And, you know, one of the quickest ways to burn out is to be someone you're not. And, you know, when we think about how even God partners with us and what we do and what we create in our life, it's like God's not going to grace who you're not. Like God's not going to put his grace on someone that you're actually not supposed to be. And I think that's even one of the things I'm even seeing now in church creatives and church creativity. And I think we've talked about this earlier, is like we're all looking the same and we're all just like copying each other and we're all just following trends. And some of that, yeah, it's efficient, it works, like it gets clicks and like people like it. But I think the disconnect is we're missing out on like who God has actually authentically made us to be. And I even going back to my journey was, you know, when I hit that place of burnout, when I was making things, I was so disconnected from myself that what I was making wasn't actually me anymore. It was just like, oh, I'm making this because I know people like it. I'm making this because I know like people will click on it and I'll get response. People will share it, whatever. And I was so disconnected from myself that I wasn't even enjoying it anymore. And I think for a lot of us, we have to get into a place where if creativity is an expression of the soul, we have to get into a place where we actually know who we are. And when you think about like, how do I find my taste, or what's my style, like that's the language, what's my style as a creative, is you actually have to go on a journey of discovering who you are to know your style. And how do you know your style? Is you notice what you're moved by, like you notice what you're drawn to. You notice, hey, what are the things that actually move me? Well, then there's a reason it moves you, because your soul connects to it. And then you start to receive that as a part of your style, and you start to develop who you are. But if you're too busy trying to be someone else, or you're too busy just copying different things without actually being connected to it, you're never going to actually create authentically. And I saw that in my own journey. When I took that break for a year, it was super hard to not make anything. And I think a lot of that was my own consequence of burning out. But when I came out of that, I went on this journey of like, God, who have you even called me to be? Like, who have you called our church to be? And our church even went through a whole new identity change in a good way, where we're like, hey, we're trying to just look like every other church. When it's like, I think Banning Leacher actually said this once in like a podcast. He's like, what kind of church would you build if you never saw any other church? It's like, what's the type of church you would build if there was no social media and you didn't see Upper Room and you didn't see Jesus image and you didn't see all these other churches? What's the church you would build that God would birth through you? And that actually hit me, because I was like, yeah, what is the church that I would build? Like, yeah, we have all these really amazing things that are like essential to church, but like, what's our identity? Like, who's God called and formed us to be? And when you start to discover that, like, that's when creativity starts to just flow. And that's when you see artists and creatives where it's like, man, like you can identify their work based on who they are, because the work really emanates who they are. And so we need to create from authenticity. And I put this quote, one of my favorite quotes, Saint Irenaeus, he's our early church father. He says, the glory of God is man fully alive. And when you're actually fully alive and who God has made you to be, that's when God's glory is clearly most revealed through your life, revealed through your work, revealed through your music, revealed through your art, is when you're actually fully alive in who God has made you to be.
Amazing. I mean, that's I'm pretty quiet because I feel like I'm taking it in. It's kind of like what I feel like I needed to hear. So maybe this call is like strictly, but so good. I think what you're saying about healthy soul, authenticity. I had one thought here. We can move on, but I do think that like I love hearing you talk, because also I've heard people say this conversation. I've heard people tell me like, you need to rest, and usually, with no disrespect, it's people who are sort of like, not that I don't respect, but I don't see them doing anything else. Yeah, like there's that balance, right? And it's like, I'm not gonna disrespect it, and it's just we were talking this week about the book Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, right? And I'm like trying to avoid that book, right, a little bit, because I'm like, I don't know if I want to like rest, but the way you're speaking it does feel. It's like, okay, there is an approach to this. I love what you said about like the level of output should be the level of input. That's super valuable, as well as like maybe we can wait for the questions and answers, but I'd love to hear like your thought process on how you live this life. But you're like, I mean, a lot of us here are on social media. A lot of us here are running social media accounts, whether for ourselves or for brands or for churches or companies, and we are constantly thinking, Can this reach the For You page? Can this reach, can they go viral, right? As we say, how do you balance that, right? Like, and I don't know if it may be your third point, but we can go to your third point. Do you know that question?
Yeah, no, that's great. It actually perfectly lines up with the last point. It's like, we were even talking about this in our call earlier, is how do we kind of balance this tension of like, hey, like we need to steward and nurture our soul. We need to be healthy, but also like, how do we value growth and influence and impact? And so what I would say to that is my third point, is that we have to create from pure motives. You know, growth and influence aren't wrong. Like we need to understand that growth and influence isn't wrong. Like Jesus valued influence and growth, right? It's like, you know, I think John Maxwell, he says the definition of leadership is influence. And Jesus was one of the most impactful leader in the world because he was one of the most influential leader in the world. Like we think about society, even like our calendar, it's like it's 2026, like is it BC? No, AD, right? It's like after Jesus stuff. Like he's shifted everything. Like he's the most influential person. And so influence isn't bad. Like growth isn't bad. But what we have to understand is what is the place that that desire comes from. You know, I often say that your motives determine your fruit, right? Why you do something determines often the results. Because it's like, do we...
Wait, can you say that again? Can you say that again? What you said?
Your motives often determine your fruit. And so why you're doing something is going to determine the outcome, like your why, right? So I think I put here, why you create is just as important as what you create. Because it's like, okay, am I creating to impact people? That's good. But am I creating to impact people so that I feel good about myself? That's bad. And so it's like both things seem very similar, but what's different? The motive, right? And so again, influence isn't bad. Like it's like and that's even the whole thing that I'm passionate about is like as Christians, like we should be influencing culture. Like we should be influential in every sphere of the world. Like influence is good, but it's why are we doing that? Are we doing that because we want to control everyone and like make our, like, no, it's like we want to influence people so that they are transformed to encounter the person of Jesus. Like that's the motive. And so when we start creating and producing with the wrong motives, it gets really exhausting really quick because our outcome, if it doesn't line up, it then starts to affect our identity. When it's like, if I'm creating with actually pure motives, like whatever the outcome is I know that like I can't control that. Like I can't fully control, like I can do my work, I can make with excellence, but like my identity is not tied to the outcome. And so that's why we have to create like from a pure place. And so the question to ask yourselves when we create and when we're doing things is what is our main motivator? Like, why are we doing this? And I understand there are some projects where it's like, you just got to do it, like make the flyer, right? But there is a place where it's like, what is your motivation for that campaign? Like, what is your motivation for that drop? What is your motivation for that series? What's your motivation for that brand, that business? And
so good, dude. This is so good.
The wrong motivation will ultimately suffocate your creativity. And so for me, and obviously I know I'm in a kind of a unique space, but I actually have reached a place now when I create, and kind of going back to that thing where I feel like I'm hitting that wall, it feels like I'm striving. I literally ask the Holy Spirit, I'm like, God, should I even make this? And I'm like, and I'm so self-aware where I'm like, God, am I making this from an impure place? Like, am I making this because I'm like, I need to up my follower count? Am I like to be real, am I making this because I feel like I'm kind of behind other content creators? Am I making this because I feel like I'm not reaching enough people? Or is it literally like I'm making this because like I want people to like experience this revelation that I got from the place of rest? And so I've even seen it's super funny, even, you know, metrics, you know, are good, but at the same time, I remember there's some posts that I did recently. There's one post where like, I remember it was late at night. I was in like a ministry meeting and I was like, I need to make something. And so I just started like designing, and it was the post. If you saw it, I want to find God in the details. And it literally took me like 15 minutes and I posted it and like blew up. And it was like 80,000 likes. It was like my biggest post ever. And I was like, I didn't even have to try. And then there's the designs where like, I'm putting so much energy into this and like 300 people like it. I'm like, whatever. Yeah. And obviously you know, it's not a 1-for-1, but I think there's that place of why you create is just as important as what you create. And the last thing, and I'll end on this, is we have to think about, why does God create? And when we talk about creativity, like creativity is borrowed. Like it's not something that we came up with. It's like it's something that God has actually given us to experience. And the reason God created, going back to Genesis, why did he make the sky and the stars and clouds and all these? So why did God create us? Is because he creates to give. That's it. It's like God didn't have to make humanity. Like God was fully satisfied within himself. Like Father, Son, Spirit were fully in communion, were fully satisfied. But God was like, there's so much goodness here. I need to give it away. And that's why he created you. And that's why he created the sky. And that's why he created the universe. It's because God's creativity is generous. It gives. And so in the same way, when we create, if we're going to actually do this for the long haul and make things that change people's lives, it can't be selfish. It has to be generous. So
good.
And with that,
wow, that was oh bro, I feel the Lord. That's so good. I mean, I feel like this is something that is never talked about, to be honest. I've never really heard anybody like dig deep into like how much pure motives is actually important. And as you're talking, there's several things, right? Like there's like a level of self-awareness. We were talking about self-awareness that anybody needs to have to be able to understand this. And obviously then a relationship with the Lord, and also knowing that we are pure, right? Because if we are pure, then our motives are pure. But this is super good. I don't want to take any more time here from people. Like I know the chat's kind of going crazy with the content, bro. I mean, you said I think JP said it was a bar. Wrong motivation will suffocate your creativity. You honestly gave me language. Also, chat, if you guys have questions, please send it in the chat, and then we'll ask Andrew. But as we're waiting for questions,
really quick, the what are the things that? Sorry, really quick. With the motives, having the right motives, the wrong motives. I think when in the space that we're in, where like it's so easy to justify, like try to like trick yourself into like, oh, I have the right, but like, oh well, it's a post about Jesus, or like it's a post about that. So like obviously my motives are right because the outcome is blah 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 blah. And like I feel like it's so easy to find yourself stuck in that place too of like justifying the motives. And I think having part of what you're saying, Joe, is like that like brutal self-honesty of like really taking brutal self-assessment of like, no, where actually is my heart? Am I hiding behind this like veneer of like humility where actually I'm like, please notice me and like I want the like adoration for this or whatever. So I really I appreciate you saying that, because like we were just having that conversation 3 days ago.
Yeah, good. I think like creativity. Where was it? I'm create motives. I love this saying, nothing we create is new because God has already created it. Yeah. I mean, that's such a like, are you ever afraid, from like a really practical, tactile question, Andrew, are you afraid ever, or does it ever cross your mind of like copy work, right? Like, oh, well, like, right. Like we've always talked about like referencing, right? And then obviously the greatest of all time, Virgil's rule of the 3% rule, like basically became like a huge part of creative culture. But in this like pure motive, did you ever struggle with like, oh, that looks like very similar to this, or like how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's like that tension of like, what is the line of inspiration and straight up copying? Like that's the question. And to go back to it, I think it's motives. Like I think it really is. And obviously there's a literal, like you look at it and you're like, you literally just trace this thing. You know what I mean? It's like you straight up copied it. But I think there's a piece of like, every one of us learns by copying. Like I remember when I first started drawing, like I learned how to copy horses, like in drawing books. And that's how I learned. I just copied horses, and eventually now I know how to draw horses. But I think I've also seen it where I've even seen people take my work and they'll either trace over it, like back when I used to do like illustration, they'll trace over it, or they'll just design the same thing and they'll put it out, but they'll advertise it as like their own work, right? And so that's where it's like the motives really reveal why you're making this and why are you doing this. If you're taking someone else's work and you're you're fully like, this is my work, I think that's where it becomes off.
Super good.
Well, kind of on that note, what are some brands and artists or designers that are inspired, that you are inspired by? Like, what are your references?
That's good. You know, I've the thing that I connect to the most right now is it's not anything like specific, but it's like a feeling. And I'm realizing even in this generation, I think you guys actually do this super well, is like unpolished design. And I think we especially in the church, there's like this window where like everything we're making was so crisp and so polished and it was so perfect, and it just doesn't connect with people. But like the raw kind of messy human feeling design connects with people. And so I think for me, you know, I've tried to like design a way where it's like I want people to feel human when they look at it. Like I want them to look at it and it's like, oh, this actually makes me feel in touch with my, like, the beauty of my humanity. And so for me, like I'm just inspired by, I love vintage stuff. Like if you see literally my wall, like I literally love collecting vintage art and vintage pieces. And I love things that have age and wear and patina. And there's something about things that age really well and then turn into something else over time. And so for me, it's like I want to make things that get better with age, which I don't know how that works digitally, but there's something about that I wanted to carry that spirit where it's like, oh, this isn't, I guess this is what I mean. It's not going to go outdated in 2 years.
So timeless. Yeah, that's fire. I had one question too. Like, as I feel like in church, a lot of times, like, some of the design projects are a little like, they're just regularly occurring. So maybe they might become like, start to feel a little repetitive. Like, how do you keep it fresh? It's like, okay, like, got to design another like sermon slides. It's like, it's not like, oh, I'm designing a shirt here and then like a billboard or this or that. It's like kind of the same, similar things over and over. And like, what do you do when it's like recurring projects like that? How do you keep those things fresh?
Yeah, I think for me, and one thing I didn't get to mention in this is like you have to constantly stay inspired. And so when you think about creativity and expression of the soul, like I really feel like you have to like feed your soul, and you have to like creatively feed yourself inspiration to constantly be growing and constantly be stretched. And so for me, when you're in that mode, especially in churches where you're just producing as like sermon series, like merch drop, event flyer, you have all this stuff, like realize, okay, there's some things that like don't really need a lot of attention, but the things that do is like, how can we continue to keep stretching ourselves and growing?
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
like,
I love it.
There is no limit. Like there's no boundary. And I think that's the difficulty that church, we've created a box that we need to fit in. And so for me, it's like, how can we keep pushing that and like exploring and taking risk and experimenting? And sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. But I think for me, and our creative directors literally in this chat, is like we've just like removed the boundaries of like what counts as church creativity versus like, let's just create, like let's just be really creative and let that be what reveals who God is. So take
I feel like that kind of like partially answers the next question, but I'll still let you address it. Like, how do you as a pastor of church, how do you pastor a church and constantly point to Jesus while still valuing creatives and the creativity of your worship, art, music, merch, etc.?
So for us, if you haven't followed us, we actually this past year made creativity one of our core values. So it's a very ballsy move, especially because we're in the South, to be like, our values are presence, family, mission, and now creativity. But for us, we really feel like we're called to like pioneer in that space and make specifically beauty and creativity a value again in the church. And so for us, it's really integrated. Like there really isn't like, and it helps that I'm the pastor. It isn't like I need to go to someone and ask permission creatively. It's like, we're just going to do it and we're just going to, integrate it. So I think for me, integration is a big piece, not like compartmentalizing like, oh, here's our creative team and they're the only creative people. But one of the things that I've been really felt called to is like empowering every believer in their own individual creativity, whether that is a visual thing or whether that is just like in business, but helping people actually unlock their creativity wherever they are, I think creates an overall value within the organization.
Super
Love
good.
that. Super good.
Love it.
Do this last one.
Yeah. So touching on what Andrew mentioned about grace being on calling and doing what he's asking us to do. Currently, I feel like I'm in a creative block in regard to running my church's Instagram with a full-time job, a relationship, solo freelance. Where's it going? Solo freelance. It feels like there's not enough time for it. So wondering if you have any advice as a father, a pastor, creative, what do you say are some ways to keep creating and also inputting with full life happening?
That's good. Yeah, I get it, man. I've been there, fathering, pastoring, leading, and then like needing to have your own personal creativity. I think for me is you make time for what you value. And it's a hard reality because you could say you value something, you know, you're like, yeah, I really value loving my wife. But it's like, if you never take her on a date, it's like, you could say it, but you make time for what you value. And so for me, you know, you have to make time for your own creativity. Like you have to. And it doesn't mean that your own creativity, people are going to see it. It doesn't mean that your own creativity is going to, you know, be blasted on the internet. Maybe it is. But like you have to make space for that. And I think this is what I'll say that I think will actually be helpful is realizing where the grace of your creativity is actually landing. What I mean by that, when I took my break and I stopped designing for a year, I came back and I was trying to find my footing. It was like, I feel like a year passed. I'm like, I don't even know like what's like trending anymore. Like, I don't know if I'm outdated. Like it was like a whole new world of design. And then AI came in and then like everyone's designing on Canva. And I'm just like, well, I feel like I like missed a whole season of like the digital world, what's going on. But what was interesting when I integrated back in, I started creating and I had all these ideas. I actually wasn't illustrating anymore. So if you saw my work in the past, pretty much all I did was like illustration work. It was a big thing that I did. And I didn't feel a grace on it anymore. Like it was literally like anytime I would do it, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like me anymore. Like I evolved a lot over the year. And I realized the grace of my creativity was more on my words than my art. And I feel like the Lord said, Andrew, your words are your art right now. Like your creative output are through your words. So if you look at my designs right now, like my designs are good, but they're not that crazy. Like they're really very simple and very chill, but they're very me. But the creative energy is actually more so on my words and what I'm communicating versus on like the actual like design. The design is the carrier of that creative output of my words. So even for you, man, it's like, where is God actually gracing your creativity? It may not be designing. Like it may be like you building tables in your garage. Like maybe that's where the creative juices are meant to be expressed. Maybe it's some other specific avenue. Maybe you're supposed to write a book. Like, I don't know. And so seeing like,
Yeah, well, I think
you wanted me to put my creative energy, and it may not look like the thing that you're doing for your church.
super good, dude. I think it reminds me of even what you said earlier about what's it called? You said, oh, the pure motives. Like there is like a motive behind that, right? Because if your motive is truly, you know, I don't know, create beauty.
Yeah.
Immediately, it's become a thing now. I mean, it's obviously everybody knows this. Like when you think beauty, you immediately think social media, right? Like that's like the innate response, like regardless of who you are. But there is like one of my favorite memories that I have is we went to Kyoto about 2 years ago, and in Kyoto, we went to this one coffee shop that has like no IG, or it's like 50 followers on Instagram, and
That's cool.
they could care less about their feed. They're just making really good coffee, and it was really good coffee, right? Like I walked in, and they're like, "What do you want?" And I well, they didn't say that, right? They said it in Japanese, and I don't speak Japanese, so I just like pointed, and they're like, bow their heads, and then the coffee shop went completely silent, and they were just working on their craft, and you could like it was. My wife and I were the only people in the coffee shop, and it was them too. It was a husband and a wife as well. And the creativity, what we're talking about, was very tangible. And I think it comes from like, you could tell their motive is like, I just want to make really good coffee.
And that's also authentic. Because they're
Exactly.
so in tune with who they were that what they made, like it wasn't about what people thought. Like they just loved
Yeah.
doing it. It was authentic.
And then it was really good, and it was just really good product as well, which I think is super important. Last question here, that somebody's asking, like, you keep saying there's grace over, right? Like the content, that'll be the last question, but like, you quote unquote grace over something. How do you define that, right? Like that's kind of like.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say the way that I define grace, like obviously, you know, biblically we see like grace is you know, God's giving us what we don't deserve, like we know, like that traditional definition. But grace is also defined as empowerment in Scripture, or the empowerment to do something God has called you to do. So oftentimes God will give you grace to do what you can't do in your own ability, right? Where it talks about like his grace is sufficient in my weakness, is that his grace empowers us to do what we can't do in our own ability. And so oftentimes when I say, you know, was the grace on this, is like, hey, is God actually empowering me to do this? Or am I just trying to do this in my own ability? Like, is this something that God is saying, hey, like, I actually want to partner. I want to give you kind of the way I see is like wind behind your sails. It's like, do I feel wind behind my sails on this thing? Or am I just like forcing it to happen? And so a lot of that comes through just like proximity with the Lord and being in his presence and asking him, God, like, is there grace? Like, are you putting wind behind this? Or am I trying to force something that you're not actually giving me the strength to do? And what happens is when we actually start to do things outside of God's grace, it becomes really exhausting really fast because we're the only people that can sustain the outcome. But when we start doing things that God's grace is on, we can actually go further and do more because he's actually empowering us to fulfill it.
So good, man. I hope, I don't know who asked that, Christian, dude. I hope you got your answer. The answer you're looking for. That's grace's empowerment is such a thing coming from like a really charismatic culture. Grace is like sometimes like I didn't think about this, but it's like, how do you define like grace? It's right, like tangibly or practically, and empowerment is such a good way to end it. But well, guys, that's St. Lennon for you, right? Like clap that. That was really good, Andrew. Thank you so much. We have a whole tab here full of notes. And I just wanted to say, Andrew, you said something about like influence and impact, and like Jesus, right? He came and he influenced the earth. And then like how your work, you know, maybe 50 years from now, 80 years from now, how it will be remembered. And I kept like, I imagine like when people come to your page, it feels like this open journal of an artist. Like, here was something that really either wrestled with the Lord or like danced with the Lord.
That's good.
And you do it so well. It's like really beautiful. And even hearing you speak, I hope everybody was so blessed. Like it doesn't feel shallow at all. It feels like there's years of like experience, and that this is not just like, you know,
you bled for these insights.
Exactly.
Like, you know, like you really like earned these.
I've suffered.
It's like an honor, like, so to hear. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. The last thing here is like, guys, if you guys aren't on our Telegram, Blake will drop our Telegram, and then that's it for Symphony. This entire video call will be on our YouTube channel under Neww, and then we'll be sharing clips throughout the week as we go. It's okay, we'll share it right now. But Andrew, thank you so much. This was super helpful. I'm super moved by it, guys. Thank you guys for jumping on. We'll announce the next day. I think we already posted about the dates, but we'll announce who it is soon. Andrew, thank you so much, dude.
Thank you guys. Honored to be here. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys for joining and listening.
Yes, sir.